Biotic materials is an experiment in the formation unit, and the question that we're trying to answer is, can the decomposition of living matter produce crude oil? So crude oil and natural gas formed from the decomposition of biotic materials over hundreds of thousands of years in a process called biogenesis. In the experiment, students will make a model of an environment that may have formed crude oil and natural gas. So this model is often referred to as a Winogradsky column. These students are going to show how to make a Winogradsky column just using common materials. So you'll need a clear plastic 1 liter container, a dowel rod, or a sturdy stick. You'll need some dry soil from a garden. We need some pond water or creek water, 1 hard-boiled egg, and then the yolk from that egg, and then some shredded newspaper. And then we're going to actually put it in this container. We're going to masking tape the lid closed and see what happens. All right, so if you guys want to open up that newspaper, and we'll use our topsoil, and we're going to mix our topsoil with some shredded newspaper and with 2 grams of eggshell. And you can even just dump all that soil right on there. And if you want to measure out the 2 grams, and then just a handful of shredded newspaper. That looks good. We're going to need to crack open one of those eggs to get the yolk out. You want to make sure when you do your soil sample that you pull out all of the sticks and twigs. You don't really want a lot of sticks and twigs or rocks. You just want clean topsoil. If you just squeeze it in your hand, then that pretty much, yep, and then it all gets mixed together, so hands get dirty in this activity. So you now have your eggshell, which is a carbonate. You have your egg yolk, which is sulfate, and you have your organic material from the newspaper and your soil to make a compost that will fill your bottle. Now the hardest part is getting it in your bottle. A funnel will work if your soil is really dry, but most topsoil that you're going to get, unless you dry it, is not going to be dry. Basically, the easiest way to get this soil in that bottle is by the handful. And you're going to try and put in a covering on the bottom up to maybe about 3 or 4 centimeters. And then we're going to tamp it down because you want to get all the oxygen out. Crude oil and natural gas formed when it was in an anaerobic environment. So the bacteria and all of the things that are doing their work down there are in an anaerobic environment. We want to get all that oxygen out. Let's see if we can get a little more dirt in there, and then we'll tamp it down. And then once you tamp all the air out, then you would continue adding this compost mix until you fill the bottle up to about 5 centimeters to 10 centimeters below the actual opening. You want to leave a little bit of space because then you're going to pour your pond water in on top. And notice that it does take a significant amount of soil to fill a bottle. So now that we've filled the bottle with our compost material, we're going to fill the rest of it as close as we can get to the edge of the cap. And we're going to pour our pond water in. Then we want to put our cap on, and we would seal it with masking tape. And the nice thing about this bottle is that as you're doing your observations over the next week or 2 or 5, depending on how long you want to leave it set, you can actually let the air escape. The gas will build up inside the bottle. When you want to let it out, you probably want to do it outside because it might actually have a smell to it. You've got the sulfate in there, so if you take it outside and actually burp it, so to speak. So as you have your students look at it, then think about these types of questions. Ask them what is happening inside the bottle, what types of bacteria are active in the environment, are there changes based on that bacterial activity? Are soil and water just lifeless parts of the ecosystem, or what are they adding to that ecosystem? And then what would happen if we increased the temperature of the bottle, put it in a direct sunlight, for instance? And based on this model, could we actually have today's scientists figure out a way to create crude oil and natural gas. You can also purchase Winogradsky columns, and Winogradsky columns are actually very similar, but they just come in a tube like this, and you can make a control that doesn't have the carbonate from the eggshell, doesn't have the sulfate from the egg yolk itself, and see what happens. And then you can have one that has both the carbonate and the sulfate in it to see if there are different changes, and you should see different bacterial activity depending on which one you're looking at. Now that you have your model environment set up, then have your students do the observations and compare and see what happens.